A mysterious man was seen editing what seems to be a fake ID of a student in his hideout. After he finished the process, he printed it and immediately gave it to his colleague so that it could be processed further without the knowledge of the ID's original owner. After they managed to get what they wanted, the man immediately gave some money to someone that had helped him. Somewhere else in a densely populated settlement, showing a man named Subareo, who at that time had just woken up from sleep. He was a student who was very obsessed with iPhones, and this was clearly seen from the wall hangings installed in his room. Soon he saw an ad on TV saying that Apple had launched its newest iPhone Series 12. He was super excited and rushed to the nearest phone store and made one of the employees on duty there feel very annoyed because he always came there every day just to look around. In order to get the iPhone, Suba decided to make extra money by doing any job such as being a waiter in a restaurant, distributing brochures, working at a car wash, or becoming a tutor. He worked hard because he didn't want to burden his parents just to be able to get what he wanted. Long story short, after Suba felt that the money he had collected was enough, he immediately returned to the store to buy the iPhone he wanted. When he arrived, all the employees there deliberately pretended not to see him. Shortly thereafter, when one of the employees came up to him, all her colleagues immediately said the iPhone series that Suba wanted, namely the black iPhone 12 64GB RAM, complete with the price. But when Suba was about to pay for it, he realized that the money he had prepared earlier had in fact disappeared, partly so that he was ridiculed by everyone there, but suddenly, his mother came to deliver the money that turned out it had fallen from Suba's pocket when he was starting his bike. Suba felt very happy when he could see the iPhone logo that appeared on his cell phone screen for the first time. He and his mother agreed to name it Buchibabu because her mother intended to use it if Suba later had a younger sibling. After taking a selfie with his mother, Suba decided to go straight to his friend's house named Swami just to show him the new iPhone and take a selfie together. But because Swami had to immediately take his mother to work to the hospital, he suggested Suba wait for him on campus so they could celebrate Buchibabu's first birthday. Arriving at the campus, Suba chose to record all activities there to show Buchibabu what he did every day, but soon when he was busy recording, his cell phone was thrown away from his hand after bumping into another student, so he immediately jumped to catch it, only to land right in the middle of a commotion between two parties. He decided to hide his cell phone in his pocket while continuing to protect it. Suddenly, a smoke bomb was thrown and the security forces led by Inspector Mahender came to arrest them all, including Suba. It was found that the student clash occurred between Lal Kishan's group and Nayak's group, two student parties leader on that campus. Upon arrival at the police station, their cell phones were immediately confiscated, making Suba feel very worried about Buchibabu. Soon, a police commissioner named Arjun Vasudvan, who was known to be very strict, showed up. He threatened to put all the students in prison if they clashed again. Shortly after Arjun left, Suba immediately approached a female police officer named Nalini so she could get her cell phone back. Not only her, Suba asked every single police officer that he met there, and because Nalini got increasingly annoyed with Suba who kept bothering her, she immediately suggested Suba take his own cell phone from a box where all the confiscated cell phones were stored, but after a long search, Suba still could not find his cell phone, so he assumed that it had been stolen by one of the police officers on duty, and because of the accusation, Nalini was angry and immediately kicked him out. Suba was forced to wait outside all night because he didn't want to leave before he could get his cell phone back. The very next day, Suba approached Mahender, who just arrived at the police station. Annoyed by Suba, Mahender lied to him by saying that Suba had to come to Commissioner Arjun's office if he wanted to make a report, and innocently, Suba decided to immediately follow the advice. In the presence of a police officer named Jiri, Suba said that the reason he wanted to meet with Commissioner Arjun was to file a case regarding his cell phone which had been stolen. When Jiri explained that it would take months if he wanted to meet with the commissioner, Suba kept begging for help, so Jiri deliberately took advantage of the opportunity by asking for some money and asked him to keep waiting outside. Shortly thereafter, when Suba saw Arjun, who was just about to leave his office, without thinking twice, he immediately ran towards him, thus provoking all the police officers after Jiri said that Suba was a potential threat. After Suba explained what he wanted, Arjun immediately invited him into his office because he didn't want the incident to be published in the newspapers, because at that time, all the journalists were focused on them. So that Suba would no longer prolong the problem, Arjun intended to replace Suba's cell phone with a new one. But unfortunately, Suba still refused because he assumed that Arjun would only give someone else's cell phone. Didn't accept those words, Arjun, who felt angry, immediately pulled his collar and said that he would destroy Suba's cell phone if he manages to find it. After Suba told all his disappointment in front of Swami, he finally realized that Arjun's daughter turned out to be their college friend who was part of the volleyball team, which he believed when he saw the girl named Shruti come to pick up her father, Arjun. To get his cell phone back, Subba decided to approach Shruti. He was willing to seek information regarding Shruti's personal life from her friends, though they refused to tell him until a man came and told him that he could help him out. He then told them that Shruti was once a TikTok content creator with 1 million followers, but that had ended because the application had been banned in their country. At night, when Subba tried to contact Jiri using his father's cell phone, Jiri, who was starting to feel irritated, explained that he would try to find information about the whereabouts of Subba's cell phone. Meanwhile, so that his son would not continue to be sad, Subba's father had intended to lend money so that Subba could buy a new cell phone, but Subba immediately refused, saying that he had considered Buchu Babu like his own sibling. The next day after class, the students of the campus, including Subba, signed their attendance list, when suddenly, one of the students ripped it off and then sold it to someone where that person only wanted to forge the signatures for his personal needs. To get Shruti's attention, Subba and Swami lied by saying that they were her followers. Shruti explained in front of them that she didn't have a cell phone anymore because she really hated it, especially with all the installed applications, because those who launched the application could ban it without caring about the feelings of the users. After hearing all the explanations from Shruti, the very next day, Subba decided to go to the campus radio broadcast room with Swami so that Shruti could listen to his words, where he really agreed with Shruti's beliefs regarding cell phones and applications and would continue to support her decision. When Shruti Subba mentioned her name, she immediately ran to meet them. In front of the two, Shruti explained her biggest dream to gather people who shared the same belief as her and create a world without cell phones. Such a thing was never imagined by Subba, but he was forced to agree because his main goal was to be friends with Shruti. In the evening, when Subba took Swami to the hospital where his mother worked, he accidentally saw an article with Shruti's face on it. Swami's mother told them that Shruti was a kind person who provided food in a food bank for the children in need, and when they saw how happy the faces of the children who eat the food, Subba's views of Shruti began to change. Since then, he always happily helped Shruti, and since they often spent time together, the relationship between them grew even closer. One day, Subba called Jiri regarding his cell phone, and so that Subba would stop bothering him, he deliberately lied by saying that his cell phone was at Commissioner Arjun's house. After hearing that, Subba was worried because he assumed that Arjun would destroy his cell phone like the threat he had said before, and so the very next day, Subba and Swami decided to visit Commissioner Arjun's house after he left for work. He told the security there that he went to see Shruti, but because it was impossible for him to tell the truth to Shruti, he looked a bit nervous in front of her, which she misinterpreted as a confession of love. To break the ice between them, Swami immediately took the initiative to praise the beauty of Shruti's mother, who at that time came to deliver drinks, but suddenly could only be silent when Shruti explained that the woman was just her maid and that her mother had died long ago. In order to find where his cell phone, Subba asked Shruti to invite the two of them to look around the house until finally, when they were in Arjun's room, Subba deliberately asked Shruti to make a cup of coffee for him. He then ordered Swami to stay on guard outside while he would try to search Arjun's room to find his cell phone. While looking for it, Subba was very surprised to find Arjun's gun inside a drawer. Somewhere else, driven by his revenge on Nayak, Lal Kishan had planned to kill Nayak, but one of his men named Rajan was seen deliberately making a phone call to Nayak so that he could hear the murder plan aimed at him, but turned out it was part of Lal Kishan's plan to provoke Nayak. Lal Kishan then asked Rajan to ask one of his subordinates to provoke a commotion, so that later they could have a great opportunity to kill Nayak. According to the order given by Lal Kishan, Rajan immediately ordered Subba to go with the excuse that he was being awaited by Shruti, even deliberately giving their group's pride scarf to Subba to be able to provoke Nayak. Since Subba had not yet realized that he was being used as bait, was also happy to use the scarf and then went to the appointed place. Shortly when he arrives there, he was immediately attacked by Nayak's men who were already waiting for him and wanted to kill him, but fortunately, he was saved by Arjun, who suddenly came there. After properly explaining the plan that someone tried to kill him, Nayak and the others were secured to the police station for interrogation. Somewhere else, so that he could get his iPhone back, Subba deliberately came over to Shruti to explain that tomorrow was his birthday, and since Shruti had promised to give whatever Subba wanted, he immediately whispered what he wanted and made Shruti streak by the request. But since she already promised, she told Subba that she would give the thing he wanted. After hearing that, Subba asked Shruti to meet him at midnight somewhere. Meanwhile, that night, Nayak and Lal Kishan's group finally agreed to ally to attack Arjun as their form of resistance, and without thinking twice, they all immediately set some traps in locations that Arjun always passed with his bodyguards. They even had the heart to rain stones at Arjun, so that he was forced to move to another car to save himself. After Arjun explained to Shruti that he would come home late, Shruti immediately rushed to meet Subba to celebrate his birthday by bringing the cake and gifts that Subba wanted. They were drowned in romance. Somewhere else, Arjun had realized that it was a group of students who attacked him, He immediately ordered his men to immediately check the CCTV around the area so they could find out where the students were hiding. Then together with the other officers, the pursuit was carried out. At the same time, Subba was seen with his friends. With a very happy feeling and full confidence, he explained to them that Shruti had fallen in love with him. Along with him were Lal Kishan and Rajan. Soon Rajan got information that his men had been arrested by the police, so he immediately left from there, but unfortunately, on his way, he met with the police and was arrested. The next day, when he just woke up, Subba decided to immediately contact Arjun using Swami's cell phone, only to explain that the firearm that belonged to Arjun was in his hands. It was revealed that the gift he asked for from Shruti turned out to be the gun, and he would only be willing to return it if Arjun returned his iPhone. Hearing the explanation, Arjun immediately told him to watch the news immediately. Upon seeing the news, Subba felt very scared because the news informed a murder that was committed against Nayak, where according to the evidence, the victim was killed using Arjun's personal firearm, and because Arjun assumed that Subba was the main perpetrator, Rajan and the others were finally released. But with this murder case, the students who did not accept immediately staged a demonstration in front of the commissioner's office because they assumed that it was Arjun who had killed Nayak using his gun. Didn't want to be considered a killer, Subba contacted Arjun again to explain that he was not involved in this matter at all, but when Arjun asked where he could get the weapon, Subba could only remain silent, making Arjun even more suspicious of him. Not knowing what to do, Subba chose to explain everything to Rajan in the hope that Rajan would be willing to help him, but Rajan refused him right away because he did not want to be involved in Subba's carelessness. Subba chose to deactivate Swami's cell phone so that Arjun could not track his whereabouts, but soon when he remembered what his mother had said, he instead reactivated the cell phone back so that Arjun could easily trace his whereabouts. At the same time, he received a call from Shruti, who wanted to meet him at a cafe so that he could return her father's weapon since she was sure that Subba was not a murderer. But without them realizing it, the conversation between the two of them at that time was heard by Arjun from the police station. Upon arrival at the cafe, Arjun deliberately gave the weapon from under the table so as not to provoke other people's suspicions, but at the same time, his name was mentioned on the TV where evidence was given in the form of a voice recording when he was contacting Arjun, which made his parents feel very surprised when they witnessed the news. Soon, Subba realized the presence of police who came to arrest him. He was forced to point the weapon at them and made the atmosphere very tense until finally Shruti deliberately averted the officer's attention so that Subba could run away. While running in the middle of the market, Subba accidentally hit a man, causing the man's cell phone and Arjun's weapon thrown into the air. At that moment, Subba jumped to catch the cell phone. It was seen that there was a mysterious man who deliberately exchanged Arjun's weapon, which at that time was lying on the ground. After the police managed to secure the weapon, Arjun immediately held a press conference in his office. Subba and Shruti were confused because the evidence shown was different from Arjun's personal firearm, which was actually black, and because Shruti's name was also being mentioned in the media. Arjun's superiors demanded that Arjun be able to immediately solve the problem so as not to affect his career, considering that the order was indeed a direct order from the Prime Minister. Not long after, when Arjun arrived at his house, Shruti decided to tell the truth in front of his father that Subba was being framed because, in fact, the perpetrator killed the victim using an official weapon, not the personal weapon he gave to Subba. After hearing this explanation, Arjun chose to immediately look for his weapon in the room, and when he showed his weapon to Shruti, Shruti felt even more confused because she did not expect that the weapon was already in her father's room. She was even more convinced that Subba was innocent. She purposely told her father all that because she didn't want her father to have personal problems with the man she loved. After hearing the honesty his daughter said, Arjun came back to Shruti in her room to show her a piece of paper which, according to his explanation, is the second piece of evidence that was deliberately not shown to the media, and if Subba really loved Shruti, he asked his daughter to tell Subba to come to prove that he was innocent. After seeing the evidence, Shruti was so surprised that she immediately contacted Subba as suggested by her father. Meanwhile, at the Prime Minister's office, he found out that the opposition party supported the students in demonstrating. He felt threatened and immediately ordered Arjun's superiors to take immediate action because he wanted to win the election. Meanwhile, Subba had arrived at Arjun's place to fulfill Shruti's invitation as a form of love and to clear any misunderstandings. Subba explained that the reason he asked for Arjun's weapon was not to do any kind of crime but to be able to get his cell phone back. He also apologized because he realized that Shruti hated the word cell phone. Later, when Subba was about to leave, he felt very surprised because Shruti suddenly expressed her feelings and then hugged him very tightly, but he couldn't stay there because Arjun had asked Mahender to bring him away from there. In the middle of the trip, Mahender mocked Subba for obeying the words said by women. Shortly thereafter, when they arrived at a deserted location, Mahendra immediately ordered Subba to take a few steps forward, while at the time Mahendra had pointed his gun towards Subba's back. Suddenly, Subba stopped. He said that he had realized that Mahendra was going to kill him if he kept walking. He knew that because he was a forensic student. Mahendra started to lose his concentration after hearing the explanation, and Subba finally managed to grab the weapon Mahendra was carrying. He then handcuffed Mahendra so that he had a chance to escape, but before he left, he emphasized that Mahendra had misjudged him because the reason he came to Arjun's house was not to obey the order from Shruti, but because of the confidence he had in himself. After Subba managed to escape from Mahendra, he was under even more pressure because of the new evidence that was rebroadcast on TV showing Arjun, who was having a press conference. Subba was found to have received a big sum of money in a bank account under his name, exactly 2 days before Nayak was found dead. When hearing the news, his father and Shruti were very surprised while his mother could only cry. After Subba realized that the police were after him, he chose to meet his father at the construction project where he worked, and after explaining that he would not have that kind of money in his account, his father advised him to immediately ask for help from a colleague named Kishore and its support who worked at the bank. But before going to Kishore's house, Subba asked for help from Swami to deliver his working uniform when he was still active as a courier so that no one would recognize him. Shortly after Kishore printed the data listed at the bank, Subba felt confused because he was sure that the account was not his. Meanwhile, at a different location, Arjun was seen bringing Chidambaram, the manager of the bank concerned, where according to Chidambaram's explanation, the party that had transferred the money to Subbaro's account was a man named Satyanarayana Subbarao. Subba was even more confused because he did not know Satya, who was claimed to be his grandfather at all. Moreover, according to the data available, Satya was known to have died 9 years ago, so he wouldn't be able to transfer his money to Subba's account, but somehow, the data had been authorized by the bank because there was strong evidence in the form of Subba's signature. When Subba tried to call the telephone number listed in the bank account, the number was no longer. Subba asked Kishore's help to recheck the data, so they were immediately directed to a man named Vika. Shortly after getting the data, Subba finally managed to find Vika. Vika kept avoiding the questions. Subba, who felt irritated, finally punched him in the face repeatedly, making Vika finally admit that he was only ordered by a man named Ansari, which according to his explanation was a person who had taken the student's signature, and that he was just a messenger to get the signatures since he was paid by Ansari to do so. After knowing where Ansari lived, Subba decided to go straight there alone. Meanwhile, the police had found his whereabouts. At Ansari's hideout, Subba found some evidence, such as some student attendance lists, saving books that had been stolen, as well as some data that has been edited, but together with the discovery of all the evidence, Subba was attacked by Ansari from behind. It was revealed that Ansari turned out to be the mysterious man at the beginning of the film. Afraid of the presence of Subba, who came to his hideout, Ansari beat him repeatedly, so that a fight broke out between the two of them, which made Ansari accidentally drop other evidence in the form of dozens of cell phones that he had stolen. Because he was unable to catch Ansari, Subba decided to return to Kishore's place while taking all the cell phones, one of which turned out to be Satya's, and because Subba was sure that all the cell phone numbers had been included in the bank account, he begged Kishore to relodge into the server so they could get more clues. At a different location, Shruti was checking the CCTV footage at her house to make sure who was the person who had returned his father's firearm. Meanwhile, Subba had checked on all data from the phones who turned out to be a student on his campus. Kishore believed that the culprit had deliberately used Subba and other students to get profit by claiming the money from the accounts of people who had died. According to Kishore's explanation, someone's account cannot be claimed if the account holder has died for 10 years and had no hair. The content of the account will later be handed over to the Reserve Bank of India or RBI, including all the money belonging to Satya, which according to existing data, the money will be handed over to the RBI within 4 months. That was why Kishore believed that the money that Subba and some other students had received was the money from the account that initially couldn't be claimed. The perpetrator used the students' names that had the same family name as the account owner. The perpetrator also deliberately collected all the student ID cards without them realizing it, so that the data could be changed as well as falsifying their signatures. That was why in Subba's new data he was claimed as Satya's grandson because of the similar family name, and with help from other parties, important documents could be formalized easily so that the perpetrators could send money from an account that initially cannot be claimed to a fake account that they created on behalf of the students. Kishore concluded that this case was a case of money theft. By exposing the motive, Subba was sure that Nayak already knew this, and that was why he was killed by the perpetrator. At a different location, after successfully escaping from the pursuit of Subba, Ansari was seen coming to his friend's house to hide. It was discovered that the man turned out to be a police officer named Ahmed, the one who came to Shruti's house to return Arjun's gun. After knowing the evidence from Subba, Shruti intended to report it to her father, but Subba said she didn't need to because he was sure that Arjun was listening to their conversations. Shortly after, Subba arrived at Ahmed's house only to find both Ansari and Ahmed had been killed, so he chose to immediately run away, which made him again branded as a murderer by Mahender, who arrived there later. After telling this matter to Kishore, the very next day, several students came to the bank pretending to want to take the savings belonging to their parents who had long passed away. Turned out the Subba had planned that to provoke the perpetrator. Everything went according to plan. Subba then met Chidambaram because he was sure that Chidambaram was the one who had killed Nayak and the one who opened a fake account under her name. Subba kept beating him, so he chose to run away by using an auto rickshaw, but when Subba tried to chase him, Subba was instead hit by a truck. He was also immediately put in the truck, which was done by Lal Kishan and Rajan, who were very angry because Subba had ruined their plans just for the sake of the iPhone that had disappeared. Soon after, they realized that the police had surrounded them. They let Subba get out because they assumed that the police were aiming at Subba for Ansari's murder case, but Mahender aimed at them instead and beat them immediately because without them realizing it, Subba had contacted Arjun before so Arjun could listen to all of their confessions. Finally, after the three were secured at the police station, Rajan explained that his uncle Chidambaram often bribed students to create fake accounts to claim the money in accounts belonging to people who have long died. Nayak knew this problem and tried to negotiate by asking for a bigger share, even threatening to expose their crimes at the student meeting. That was why they deliberately made a commotion at the campus so that the meeting was cancelled. One night, when they attacked the police officers, Lal Kishan accidentally found Arjun's weapon left in his car, so using that weapon, they finally decided to kill Nayak, and the next day after Subba called Arjun to ask for his cell phone, Ansari deliberately swapped Arjun's gun, which was lying in the ground, then ordered Ahmed to immediately return it to Arjun's house when the students were holding a demonstration in front of Arjun's office, but in the end they were forced to kill Ansari and Ahmed to cover their crimes. Back to the main timeline. After Subba was declared not guilty, he innocently asked Arjun where his iPhone was, but he immediately stopped what he was about to say when Shruti held his hand. In the end, it was revealed that all this time, Subba's iPhone was not in Arjun's hands nor stolen, but was hidden under the desk at the police station and was found by Nalini with its LCD cracked. After getting it and going home, Subba immediately charged it in the hope that it would work. Soon the police officer came and gave him a 30 lakh check for the incident that had involved him. He didn't seem to be grateful after receiving it, but after he saw his phone showing the Apple logo, a smile was finally seen on his face.